Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for being here today. We are talking today about mental fitness. Yes, everything. We've just had a month of mental health and the importance of mental health. And I find that we've done a lot of awareness around mental health, but we haven't done a lot around the solutions. So today is really about the solution. And we're going to talk about mental fitness. So, to start off here, I would like everybody to go to a website. Hopefully, you're on a computer that you can reach this website. And I'm going to put it right now in the comments. Let me just see here. We're going to just stick our show. There we go. And we're going to stick this into the comments. So, let me know if you're here, where you're from, maybe your role, what interested you in joining this call today with mental fitness. Let me know. Be very interesting, and know that this presentation can be brought into your organization. I can do a special feature of this, but it's a really, really important topic today. So I've just put up a website, www.positiveintelligence.com/saboteurs/ saboteurs spelled SABOTEURS / and what I'd like you to do is go in and do an assessment before we start. Okay, it'll take about 5 minutes maybe, but I just want to get you started on that, and then we'll be waiting for people as they join us as well. Just let me know that you are here with me. And in the meantime, you're going to this saboteur assessment. I'm going to share my screen, what it looks like. Here it is. So you're going to this website here, and you're going down to discover your saboteurs. Okay. Positive Intelligence is the company that has done all this research on sabotaging thoughts and how to get into positive mindset and how to exercise the brain around that. So you're going to go to the Discover Your Saboteurs. You're going to click on there, and it's going to take you to 9 ways we self-sabotage. You're going to go to Next and start your saboteur assessment. Okay. And it starts asking you the questions. So that's where you're going right now. If you have any issues, please reach out. I see, Judy, you've done yours. That's great. And we'll just see if anybody else in the meantime is going to do theirs. So just get comfortable, get yourself a cup of water, and we'll be starting very shortly. I just want people to start getting their assessment done if they can. Okay. If you can't do it, if you're on a phone or something and you cannot do it, well, that's okay. You can do it after. That's not a problem. All right. But let's give people 5 minutes to do that. So we're going to wait a couple of more minutes here. And when you get the assessment, I will show you what an assessment report looks like. Here we go. Okay. So your assessment, very interesting. Depending on when they're done, things come up differently, but it will look something like this. Hang on a moment. Let's just share my screen with you. And we're going to share the assessment. So you're going to take a look and see that you've got something like this. It looks like you've got all these saboteurs that we're going to talk about. Okay, the saboteurs are the gremlins, the negative monsters in your head. Okay, the negative chatter in your head. So they've got names for them. There are only 10 of them. You see 9 only here because we will talk about the 10th one, which everybody has, is the master of all. All right, so let's see if you can get that going. And let me know if you still need some time here on the chat. If you're watching this as a recording, you can pause this and then you can do your saboteur assessment and come back. If you're here and you're doing it, then please let me know if you need a little bit more time. Okay. That's okay. Judy, it's all right. It's never too fast. You just do it, answer the question spontaneously. That's even better than giving the time. So that's great. So let's get started. All right. So your saboteur assessment, you're going to hold on to that for a moment before we get back to it. And I'm just going to start with a presentation that tells you what we're talking about today. What is mental fitness? So here I'm going to share my screen. It's going to be this one here. Okay. So, oh, how come you can't see this? No, that's not what we're looking for. I'm going to stop my share, remove. So sorry about that. Stop sharing. Okay, let's go back in here, share my screen, and I'm looking to share my, oh, I know why. I know why. So sorry about that. Technology sometimes is just a little tricky. Okay, I'm going back into my screen here. It's funny how the slides on these on this format here does not show properly, so that's why I'm doing it this way. So I apologize. The slides just get cut off on this StreamYard that we're using. So here you go. So right now we're going to talk about mental fitness and mental resilience. What is it? Mental fitness basically is the capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. Okay, so when you respond, are you reacting or are you coming from a place that's more from a gentle place, right? So, and you'll know what we mean as we go along. Mental resilience, I've added in here, although positive intelligence doesn't talk about mental resilience, I've added it in here as the capacity to recover from life's challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. Okay, so recovering, responding, and recovering are different. Respond is more like you get triggered by something, somebody says something or something happens, and you respond quickly. Whereas recovering is you might have gone through a lot of trauma. Like if you're thinking about nursing these days and how much stress we hold on to and how much we're going through, we can carry that in our body for a very long time. And to recover from it creates resilience. Okay. And it's funny, the word resilience is funny to me because you go into organizations sometimes who are trying to build resilience in their nurses. And I think to myself, my first response when I heard that was, yeah, it's about the organization. It's not about the nurses, right? However, when I look more into it, the resilience is really more about us. I know the organization wants our nurses to be resilient, but I think if we look at if I can respond better to a trigger, if I can be more resilient, I will be happier in my life, right? It'll be, and when I'm talking about nurses, I'm talking about the human being behind the uniform. Okay. I'm not talking just about the role of a professional nurse. I'm talking about the human being. So we want to be able to recover from all the past traumas or the traumas we're going through right now, the stressors, I'm going to call them. And we want to be able to respond to any kind of stressor that comes our way. So why do we want to do that? Well, the impact is really important. It has an impact on our peak performance. If I'm not triggered by things that you say or how you do things or how a patient asks me for something, then I'm going to be able to perform at a better level than I would if I was reacting in a negative mindset. The second thing is a peace of mind and wellness. I think that probably trumps all of these is really the peace of mind. I have reached in my life a place of peace of mind where I can let go of things and just be at peace with it. Even in the worst of circumstances, I'm able to just be with what is and not try to control things that are out of my control. So that's a really, really important benefit of mental fitness. And the third one is healthy relationships. Listen, if I'm at peace with myself, if I'm better with myself and better relationship with myself, then I'm going to be in better relationship with you, with everybody else, and with the world and the way the world is, whatever we want to, however we want to rate the world as being a terrible place or a hard place or whatever it is. I look at it as a place with challenges and an opportunity to learn. So very different when you're working your mind, your mental status, and your mental health, and you're keeping it fit. You're going to be a very different person, performing better, peace of mind, and healthier relationships. Okay, let's move on to the second place here, where we're talking about PQ, by the way, is positive quotient, which means positive intelligence. Okay. Like IQ, EQ, that kind of thing. So PQ is the results of factor analysis research. And what they've discovered with intensive, quite extensive and intensive research is that there are only 3 core muscles at the root of mental fitness. And I love this because it's a little bit like, let me just take this screen off for a second. It's a little bit like, when you're talking about colors, you're talking about primary colors. There are some primary colors, but we have billions of colors, right? And so what we're looking at is taking just the basis, the primary colors we have, or in this case, the 3 core muscles that are at the root of mental fitness. It simplifies things. When you think about emotional intelligence, which is where positive intelligence is derived from, the emotional intelligence can be very, very complex. It can be a lot of learning around that on how to handle different circumstances. Positive intelligence has simplified it. And so we're going to talk about the positive intelligence, the research, all the saboteurs and all that. And then we're going to go into the mental fitness exercises. Okay. That'll be closer to the end. So bear with me because I think the learning is really, really important. All right. So now we go into understanding the 3 core muscles, which are the saboteur interceptor, the sage, and self command. And we're going to go through those. The saboteur interceptor, that is the need to figure out a way to intercept the saboteurs. What do we mean by that? When you have a negative mindset, a negative thought, that's a saboteur. That is a gremlin. That is the negative emotion. And what we need to do is we're going to identify who those saboteurs are, and we're going to learn how to discredit them and take away their power and credibility. That's pretty cool. Right? When something comes up, we can say, that's a saboteur thought. It's a negative mindset. It's a negative thought. I need to get rid of that. So I can name that saboteur and get rid of it. So if you're in a negative mindset for, or negative emotion rather, for more than a second, you're in saboteur mode, right? And you're going to label your thoughts and emotions in that moment as saboteur and let them go. Now, do you want to know which saboteur it is? Sure. If you want to play that game, that's great. But it's not as important as knowing that it is a negative saboteur and you don't want it there, right? To be able to do that, you need to have studied your saboteurs and discredited their lies and limiting beliefs. So we're going to learn how to do that. Before we go there, I want to tell you a story. And this is the story of a old Cherokee. Okay. Old Indian chief Cherokee. He was with his grandson, and there was he was telling his grandson a story. He says, there's a battle that goes on inside people, right? There's this fight going on inside ourselves. And he says, my son, the battle is between 2 wolves inside us all. The grandson's looking up, 2 wolves fighting, okay? And he says, one is evil. It's anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. And I'll add shame in there even, right? And the other is a good wolf. This is the wolf that has joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith, right? Can you see the difference between the 2 wolves? He tells his grandson. Grandson's, yeah. He says, so he's thinking for a moment, and he says to his grandfather, to the old Cherokee, he says, well, if there's this fight between these 2 wolves, which wolf wins? And the old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. And think about that. Are you giving into your negative emotions, or are you giving into the positive emotions? Interesting, right? So that's the 2 wolves. So being conscious of the saboteur, which is our negative wolf, and the sage on our right side of our brain is the best self at peace, right? With oneself. The best person that can show up inside yourself. Okay, so that's the story of the old Cherokee. Let's continue here. So when we talked about the saboteurs, we know that there are 10 saboteurs, but you got an assessment that only showed 9. That's because the master of all saboteurs is the judge. Okay? And the judge is the one who rules or runs the other 9 saboteurs. So let's meet the judge. The judge is the universal saboteur that afflicts everyone. It's the one that beats you up repeatedly over mistakes or shortcomings, warns you obsessively about future risks, wakes you up in the middle of the night, worrying, gets you fixated on what's wrong with others or your life. And the judge activates your other saboteurs. So it always has an accomplice with it. Okay. And that's what causes the stress and unhappiness. And of course, we can't be at our peak performance, so we have reduced effectiveness and our relationships are not good. So the judge is, let me explain the judge a little bit deeper. The judge is the one who will judge you. So, when you find yourself going, oh, I'm such an idiot. What did I just do? Or, why can't I get this project done? Why do I have so many problems with the patients? Why is it, like me, right? I'm judging myself. And we do that a lot, right? When something's not working. I was just talking actually this morning on a live stream about human trafficking and the nurses, right? And how the nurses are actually judging themselves before asking for help and saying, I'm in a situation where, I've been taken advantage of, abused. I'm international nurse. I'm coming in here, but I won't talk I won't talk about it to anybody else because I'm got full of shame. I'm judging myself that I should have known better, right? We do this a lot. The judge also has the component of judging others. Well, listen, if I'm in pain, if I'm feeling like I've done something wrong, what's the best way to take the pain off me? I'm going to say it's you. It's your fault. I'm going to blame you. Listen, if I'm not happy as a nurse by the bedside, it's so easy, instead of taking charge and saying I've got to raise my voice and talk about things, it's so easy for me to say, yeah, healthcare is this and healthcare is that, and they don't do this and they don't do that, and my colleague is lazy, and boy, so much judgment going on to other people. But it also, the third thing it does is it judges circumstances. So what's the big thing that we just came out of? COVID. When COVID hit, what was the first thing people said? If you looked around the world, people were saying, this is bad. This is a bad thing. We're going to die. It's going to create a lot of problems. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's not going to create problems. It doesn't mean that it's not a difficult challenge. But the point is that we're judging the circumstance instead of looking at it from a place of, I wonder why this is happening in our world right now. Why is COVID happening? Is it something that we need to learn? Is it an opportunity for us to change things? And maybe there's an opportunity in this. And trust me, I had the opportunity in COVID that I moved across the country. 7 of us in my family moved because of COVID. Like, if the pandemic hadn't hit, certain people wouldn't have lost their jobs in our family, and we wouldn't have just picked up 7 of us and moved across the country. What a great thing that happened out of something bad, right? But judge it. Bad, good. Notice it's an automatic thing to want to judge. So the judge is the master. Judge me, judge you, judge circumstances. Remember, and I want you to start noticing in your life where you are actually judging. All right, so now that we know the judge is the master of all, then we go to the place of his, and I say his, forgive me, but all my saboteurs are males. I don't know why, but they just happen to be males. But I'm not saying they all are. So after the judge, we have the 9 accomplices. So if you have not done your assessment, I put the link in there. It's basically www.positiveintelligence.com/saboteurs/ and you will get to the assessment. But what you will find out is we're going to rate you, or the positive intelligence quiz is going to rate where you are with all your saboteurs. Like, is the controller running your show? Running your mind. The controller is, and we'll go through each one of these. The controller, the hyperachiever. Like, it's a good thing to be achieving, but it's not healthy to be in the hyperachiever, to always want to be achieving more. It's a good thing to take control. If there's a fire and I need to get people out of the house, then absolutely I take control of the situation. But if I'm trying to be if I'm controlling so many things and everybody else, then it's not healthy. And there are repercussions for that. We'll talk about that. Restless, just can't sit still for a few minutes and I've got to find something else to do. And I'm always looking for the next thing. The stickler, that's the perfectionist, right? The stickler is like, I cannot let this go until it's perfect, or I will not let go of this conversation with you until you fix this word that you use that wasn't the right word in your language, because I'm not going to listen to the rest until you understand why you said what you said and what you should have said. And oh my word, the sticklers sometimes can be so difficult to work with. Remember, we talked about relationships, right? This impacts our relationships. The pleaser. Oh, many of us nurses are pleasers, right? We're caregivers. It's natural for us. We want to be liked. We want to be admired. We want to be doing our job well. So we do everything we can to please everybody. And what happens? Well, we get a little tired, don't we? And then we forget about ourselves. But we'll take a look at the lies in a moment here. The hypervigilant is the one who's thinks of danger. Like everything is, no, we shouldn't do that, because if we do that, the family might walk in and they'll think that we're doing something else, or we can't do that because the boss or my head nurse will, chief of nursing or whatever, will walk by. And it's like constantly afraid to do things because of fear of repercussions, or something bad is going to happen. The avoider is the one who avoids maybe conflict, maybe avoids conversations, avoids doing certain jobs. And it's interesting because years back when I did this, my top ones were the controller and the avoider. And I felt that they were very much in parallel together, because I felt that if I could not control something, I would avoid it. So even look at people who say, well, I'm going to avoid doing my finances or pay my bills because I don't have control of the amount of money that I'm making and the amount of money putting out. Like there's so many different things, examples where we avoid, and it might be tied with something else. It could be tied with the stickler, for example, or the hypervigilant. Like some of these are play on each other. So just be cognizant of that. The victim, wow, that's the one that, poor me. And I think that's partly in the profession of nursing. I've seen this a lot with nurses where they don't feel they can do anything about their circumstances, change their circumstances, because they're victims of the circumstances. And so therefore they don't take the initiative. They avoid, by the way, taking initiative for something, because by being a victim, they might feel heard, right? That's the place where you want, if I can complain about things and how I'm in a situation, then I'll get the attention I need, which sometimes is part of what the pleaser wants, right? So it's very interesting how these overlap sometimes. And the hyper rational, of course, is that person who's rational about things, but being hyper rational, sometimes they don't get things done or they don't move forward because they're so stuck, like the stickler, in certain things, and they just can't move forward. So let's look at some of these saboteurs and take a look at what their lies are and how to deal with them. So I'm going to share a different screen here where I'm going to talk about the lies. Here we go. So the lies our saboteurs tell us. This is something I put together. This doesn't come from the positive intelligence, something that I put together to help my clients understand their particular saboteurs. So the first one, we're just going in alphabetical order, or first starting with the judge and then going alphabetical. So the first one is the judge, the biggest liar of all, who says, without me pushing you, you will get lazy and complacent. Well, that can be true if I believe that. If I believe that if the judge doesn't push me, then I'm going to be lazy and complacent, then absolutely, I've given the judge the right to that lie. Without me pushing you for mistakes, you will not learn from them and repeat them. Without me scaring you about bad future outcomes, you will not work hard to prevent them. Well, guess who's running your mind here? If the judge is doing this and you believe it, then the judge is running your mind. You're not self-commanding, okay? Without me judging others, you will lose your objectivity and not protect your self-interest. Without me making you feel bad about the bad outcome, you won't do anything to change it. So interesting how the judge can really make us believe that he's serving us, right? So when we're looking at self, it badgers self for past mistakes or current shortcomings. When we're looking at the judge judging others, it focuses on what is wrong with others rather than appreciation. So notice if I go to appreciate somebody instead of focusing on what's wrong with them, I'm getting rid of my saboteur. It gets into inferior superior comparisons, right? And with circumstances, it insists a circumstance outcome is bad rather than seeing it as a gift and an opportunity. So when you're in this place, your thoughts go to what's wrong with me? What is wrong with you? What's wrong with my circumstances? Right? There's this constant nagging in the head that's constantly happening with us. Our feelings are guilt, regret, shame, and disappointment, right? Guilt, by the way, the difference between, as Brene Brown says, the difference between guilt and shame is the guilt says, I've done something wrong, right? I've done something wrong. That's me judging myself. Shame is, I'm a bad person. So the judge can get to me to a point where I actually believe that I'm not good. I'm not worthy, right? I don't have confidence in myself. The judge is very, very sabotaging, very damaging. Okay. If we go to the next slide, which is about the, let me just go back to my slides. Sorry about this. Yeah, so if I go to the next slide, it'll be about the avoider. So we talked about the avoider. I am going to make your life more pleasant and positive and enjoyable. That's what the avoider says. So don't worry about doing that right now. You don't want to write that article, which is something I'm going through right now. I'm writing an article and I find myself wanting to avoid and saying, you know what, I'll just go and have a cup of tea or go play a card game with my parent or my mother and my husband and do something more positive, but I'll just do that for an hour and then I'll come back and write my article, right? So I find a way to say, I'm going to find this more pleasant, positive, and enjoyable if I just avoid it. It leads to procrastination. Okay. And I love somebody just, one of the coaches, actually, Eric Edmeades out there talked about procrastination and said, procrastination is just leaving something to do for later. So procrastinate. Do you want to write that article or do you want to go play cards? Maybe you want to procrastinate playing cards so that you can work on your article. So you're procrastinating something. So procrastination is not a bad thing. Just choose what you're procrastinating, right? Otherwise, it becomes an avoider. It creates a bigger and more unpleasant thing to deal with. Well, we all know that, right? When we avoid things, eventually it catches up to us. And short term, it gives you temporary relief, but bigger pain in the long run. So if we understand that the avoider is really just out to make it more painful for us, then we might start to challenge that avoider when it comes up. That's the whole key here. The next piece is the controller. Okay. Through me, I can control the outcomes so that you can get better outcomes and within the standards you want. That's what the controller tells me. Well, makes you believe that if you don't take control, nothing will get done properly. How many of us, say yes in the chat if you can relate with this? I know I can, who've said, well, if I don't do it, it'll never get done well. Or if I don't do it, it'll never get done. Right? So one of the two. So if that's you, yeah, by all means, let me know. And so with the controller, the perception with others is that no matter what they do, they cannot please that person, and so they give up and just follow direction, losing influence or growth. So the minute I start trying to control my kids, controlling my husband, controlling the situation, whatever it is, I'm not giving others the opportunity, and they actually give up trying. And so I actually make the controller saboteur right. Yeah, because they won't do it if I don't do it. Well, absolutely, you're right. Until you're not, until you stop doing it, and then they show up. And it creates less positive outcome for you in the long run, right? Because it's not a happy place to be a controller. Trust me, been there and still catch myself doing it. All right. The hyperachiever is, again, we said achieving is one thing. That's great. Hyperachieving is not healthy. But the saboteur says, you can achieve more because of me and be happier if you have an ambitious goal set by me, right? Not set by an achiever, but set by the hyperachiever. So there are people, type A personalities sometimes get into this, right? Where they just want to achieve, achieve. And really, look at where the avoider sometimes steps in. Well, if I keep achieving and I put my attention there, then I might be avoiding something else. That's one way to deal with the avoider. So the achievement is the condition for you to have self-love and self-acceptance, creating your self-identity. If glitches happen, your identity is at risk. Your identity is tied to your attachment. You get stressed out, waste mental, emotional energy, and try to get back to the path you're on, and everyone around you freaks out. Can you relate to this? I mean, think about, whether you're the one who's has a saboteur, who's a hyperachiever, or somebody else does. So imagine if your sage, that's the peaceful part of you, right, had been setting the big goal. The sage will work towards the goal, but will be okay from the learning and see the gift if it does happen, if it does not happen. So if something doesn't happen, well, what did I learn from this? That's the sage mind, not the hyperachiever who says, you should have done more. You could have done this. You could have done that, right? You recover faster without wasting mental energy. You are more likely to achieve your goal if you're coming from that sage mentality. So the hyperachiever has you achieve less than more in actual fact, or achieves it but at high cost. Okay, something to think about. All right. Hyper-rational lie. I can help you make better decisions because all decisions are best made using the rational part of the mind. Loves to tell you this because the more that hyper-rational saboteur can make you believe that, the more you will be able to succeed. That's what the hyper-rational says. And no, because human beings are not rational. They are emotional and messy, inspirational. The inspiration, loyalty, and passion are all emotional. So being rational is not the human behavior. Okay? So understanding that. When relationships are at play, the hyper-rational can be quite destructive. True. Think about relationships where somebody's trying to be so rational, it gets in the way of being productive. And sometimes that's even a conflict within us when we're hyperachievers and hyper-rational. We can really be at high risk of judgment of ourselves at that moment, because we're holding ourselves back by being hyper-rational, but we're also holding ourselves, trying to achieve more by being hyper-achiever. So the conflict is there. And it sits within us, and it's not a comfortable place. I have clients who are in this place, and it's very challenging for them. The rational wants to fix the problem, does not include emotional intelligence. People do not feel seen, connected, or heard when somebody's being overly rational. The rational mind is wonderful when you need to do a task such as hammering a nail, but not when dealing with things that require emotion. Right? When you're dealing with emotions, the rational piece is not going to serve you, or at least not in its full extent. You make worse decisions by not paying attention to your emotions and other people's emotions. So you're just making rational decisions and not taking people into consideration. And hyper-rational people who have this hyper-rational saboteur come across as non-sensitive, when in fact they truly are, but don't think it serves the situation. And that's the lie. All right, let's move on. The next one is hyper-vigilant. So the lie of the hyper-vigilant is, in order for you to protect yourself and loved ones, you must always be alert and anxious so that you are most protective. A lot of people who have gone from child, because these are all things that actually develop in your childhood as a way of um, survival. Okay. So people who are hypervigilant, I often find in their childhood, they either had typically a mother, but it could be a father, but typically it was a mother for some reason, from my experience, who was overly protective and overly careful with her children. And it came up it develops in yourself because you learn it, but also because you're afraid, you've developed a fear inside of you that things that might go wrong. I mean, your parents have instilled that in you, or your experience in life. It doesn't have to be your parents necessarily. It could be your experience where things have gone wrong, and so now you're very afraid that things will go wrong, and so you develop this saboteur to protect you. It's a way of protecting you. Okay, just like when moms who are being overprotective, or dads, and for that matter, it's that place of the fear that something bad's going to happen to your child, the most precious thing that you have, right? So good or bad, doesn't matter. That's how it gets developed. So in order for you to protect yourself and loved ones, you must always be alert and anxious so that you are most protective. Well, in the sage vigilant mode, you can be protecting your family or villagers in this case by taking the time to see why things are happening. For example, the wind moving trees versus a tiger moving the trees, right? We're talking about villagers in remote areas. Like, we can look at that and go, okay, let's observe, let's just be curious. Well, no, I don't hear an animal in there, but you know what, there's a lot of wind, that's probably what's moving the trees. So there's a different frame of mind than going, what's that? Must be a tiger, going directly to the worst case scenario. Okay. When you're doing your PQ reps, your mental fitness exercises, which we will go through, and you're observing from an informed place, this is going to serve you much more than jumping to conclusions, and creating stories. And the lie is, people believe me when I'm calm and laser focused versus always in a panic crying wolf. So the lie is about, be in a panic, be vigilant, whereas, and cry wolf, and people just don't believe you anymore. Right. So when you need to be vigilant, people would just go, it's nothing. Don't worry about her. She's always like that. She's overreacting. All right. So the hypervigilant does not serve. Vigilant is okay. All right. So we just be cautious of our decisions and how we move with it. The pleaser. I can help you have better relationships. I will have people like you more. I will have people like you more, and trust you more. I don't know. There's a typo here. Sorry. By only saying pleasant things to people and not saying any of the tougher stuff, people end up not trusting you. And I know that. I have a very close friend who's a pleaser. And sometimes when he's trying to please me, which is his natural instinct, right? I sometimes go, what's in it for him? Like, why is he doing this? Is it about me, or is it really about him? So the pleaser's always giving, and after a while, people expect and continue to take and take and take and take. And I know a couple of, it's interesting, they're both guys, actually, when I think of it. They are both pleasers, and the complaint that they have is people take advantage of them. Well, yeah, if I want something badly, who am I going to turn to? Because I know you're not going to say no to me, right? Distances people, and then you get frustrated and feel resentment. So people start avoiding you because they want to. There's the avoider coming up again, because they don't want to be around you, because they don't know if they trust you, or what's your motive behind all this. So the pleaser can look very sweet, but can be actually not so sweet if we let it be a maximizer here, right? Okay, the restless lie. Life is short. I'm going to make sure you get the most out of life. Because of me, you will experience life most fully, accomplish the most, and grow the most. Well, have you ever gone on vacation with somebody who's restless? They just don't know how to sit on a beach and relax and grab a book and have a drink and just have a nice talk. They've always got to be moving. Geez, I know somebody else. It's funny. These are all guys coming up today. I know somebody else who's very restless and tried to sit down and have a conversation. No, he's always got to get up and move and go get something. And his listening skills are horrendous because he's not hearing anything, because he's too focused on what's next. So there you go. Keeps you jumping from one thing to another and looking at what is next or is more interesting. Instead of living life fully, you're never present to what is in front of you, always looking for what could be better. Wow. So not never in the present moment. And we know the impact of what that means. If you're always in your past or your future and never in the present time, that creates a lot of stress. You start many things but rarely complete anything. Your effectiveness and performance is minimized. You get less out of life. Fascinating. Now, the stickler. The stickler is the perfectionist, right? I can bring more peace and joy to your life by putting things in perfect order and perfect quality. This is what brings you greatest satisfaction and peace. This is the people, putting order in things. It's like, if we just do this right this way, everything will be perfect and we'll be able to enjoy things. Yeah, but we got a lot to do. And the restless is standing there beside him, right? And wow, it's quite interesting, the dynamics of a restless and a stickler together. In fact, it does the exact opposite to be a stickler, right? To respond in a stickler way. It creates less perfection and more anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety in a stickler, right? A lot. I've seen this in my clients. Um, Actually, the people with anxiety typically are the ones who want everything in perfect order. They panic that it might not be in order. So typically, only 20% of things in life needs to be done close to perfection, but not even that. So if you think of 20%, you're creating a lot of stress and anxiety, therefore no peace of mind. So it's interesting. And yet I know where these people are coming from. Their intention is so real. But that's because the saboteur accomplice is really running the show. Okay, so let's go to the last but not least is the victim lie. I'm going to provide you with more love, positive attention, and connection with people. And I can tell you, I have had client over client over client who have been in the victim mode, and they believe that they get more attention and more love and connection with people. But in actual fact, when not feeling loved, we start to have self-pity, a way to soothe ourselves. And what happens next is that people get tired of us and move away. I mean, who wants to hang around a victim, right? The truth is, we receive less attention and love from people, but we're constantly searching for it. And the person who hasn't been exhausted by the victim will be the next person to give you that love and attention until they get exhausted. And then you look for the next one. So we end up more disconnected. And when we're more disconnected, what do we say? Oh, it's so hard being single. It's so hard being alone. It's like, again, goes back to the victim, because that's what feeding the victim is, the victim, right? It's just like a cycle. So pretty powerful stuff here, learning about ourselves. And the great thing is when I do this in groups, we get to talk about each other. We get to talk about how these things are showing up for ourselves, and where we walk away, we come back a week later and we go, yeah, I just noticed my victim stepped in, or my saboteur came, my stickler came in, or the judge was really on it. Like, first I judged and then I moved into controlling. All these things show up, and we're so much more in tune and aware of what our mind is running through. It's so easy to say, stop being so negative, right? Like, stop complaining. Well, yeah, but then what else do I do? Well, that's what we need to know. That's what we need to find out, is what else do I do? Okay, so let's find out. Before we go into finding out what we do, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the science behind this. Now that you've gotten a little curious about yourself, I want you to understand the science a little bit behind it. And we're going to simplify the science. We're not going to make it so difficult, okay? So let's go back to the screen that we were on here, where we talked about the accomplices. And now let's go into, where do these saboteurs and our sage live? The saboteur lives in the brainstem, in the limbic system, in the parts of the left brain. So I call it, the logical side. Logic is great, but being too logical, or, having those saboteurs run the show, is not healthy. But it lives in the left brain. And the sage is in the middle prefrontal cortex, the empathy circuitry, which is the part of the right brain. So think of left brain sabotaging, negative thoughts, right brain, the sage, positive thinking, right? We know the saboteur motivates you through negative emotions. So if motivates you. It gets you doing things from a place of fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity, etc. That evil wolf. So if I'm in fear, I'm going to respond a certain way. If I'm stressed, I'm going to respond a certain way. If I'm angry, I might snap back at you, right? If I'm guilty, I might start to blame you because judge you because I don't want to feel the hurt on me, right? Those kinds of things. There's insecurity. When our sage, uh, when we uh, when we function from our sage, it motivates us through positive emotions. So from that place, we learn to be more empathetic. Wonder why they're feeling this way. I wonder why, you know, he's being so rational, hyper rational. I wonder why he's being so picky at things. Being curious about what's going on over there versus, I'm the victim of this, or I'm going to try to control this, or whatever. I'm coming from a place of empathy, curiosity, creativity. Maybe I can create something from this. And there's passion and purpose. So it's notice even when I speak about it, I speak of the saboteurs from a very, almost like a controlling thing. And the sage has got so much more relaxation in her or him, right? It's that place of peace. Right. So know that. And we know that the saboteurs, we might look at hyperachievers, like those CEOs of an organization, a mother who is a single mom and many children. She's trying to control all the things that she's doing, trying to take charge. Well, they might generate success, which we know a lot of them do. They're very successful, but they're not happy because this negativity is running their life. Whereas in the sage, coming from the sage perspective, it generates your highest success and sustained happiness. Now, this is all figured out by research, okay? This is not made up. This is done through research. So if we take a look at negative emotions are only helpful for 1 second as an alert signal. So I hear somebody coming in through the front door at 3:00 in the morning. That's an alert, right? But if I stay in a negative emotion of fear, I might not be able to see clearly and to respond from a laser focused place, from a clear laser focused place. Where I might be is if I go to the sage and say, okay, there's a noise. What's my best choice here? Should I call 911? Should I, check it out first, put the lights on, or say hello? Like, what is my choice? I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying there are choices that might come from a place of more clarity versus reaction, right? So we're responding. Remember, the definition of mental fitness is responding to, let me just go back so that you can see it, responding to life's challenges with a positive rather than negative mindset. Okay, so keep that in mind. So if you have a negative emotion, you're in saboteur mode, but it alerts you and you have a choice in that moment. That's the moment of choice. I actually want to I'm going to move up a little bit in my slides because I think this is an important piece to introduce right now, is the neuroscience of habit formation. So when you have an event that happens, as you can see in this diagram here, you got an event that happens, you get a synapsis and you respond. So you either respond in a saboteur way. So if you say something nasty to me, I might respond and say, who the hell do you think you are? Or I might slap you, as Will Smith did on stage. Remember that? That was a response. It was a delayed response, but he built up and he went and slapped, I can't remember his name, on stage, right? So what we're trying to do here is say, how do we get to the sage response? And I look at this as a saboteur highway. It's a habitual reaction that we want to change. So I think of it as, imagine you're driving a Jeep, okay? And you get to a fork in the road. There are two roads, and one of them has track marks. You can see, it's a dirt road, or there's grass on the side and everywhere, but there are tire marks and the grass has been run down. And that's your saboteur path. That's the road you've always been on. It's the path, the easiest path to go to, because it's the one you've built the muscle to keep repeating and repeating and repeating. Whereas you look on the right side, there's another path. You can vaguely see that there might be a path there, but the grass is really high. Haven't been down that road very much. Well, it's a lot easier for me to go down the path that I know, than the path that I have to create a new habit for, right? So that Jeep comes to the stop in the road and decides, do I go down that sabotaging thought, which is typically where I go quickly because it's immediate response, that 1 second alert, boom, and I respond. Whereas the other one, I might have to pause for a second and go, okay, let me see, how can I go down this way and start to exercise that muscle, right? You know that when it's like, think of it when you put your coat on. You take your coat. I want you to think of yourself putting your coat on. What do? How many of you put your left arm in first? That's what I do. Put my left arm in first, and then I fling it around and put my right arm in. Now, if I said to you, I want you to now for the next little while to really think about when you put your coat on, put your right arm in first. Or if you use your right arm, put your left arm in first. Okay, just play with me here. And notice how uncomfortable that is. Notice that it's not a habit. You have to start thinking. And this is what changing your neural pathways is all about. You're building new neural pathways, the one that you want to go down more often versus responding in a negative emotion. Okay, that's the science. I mean, it's so simple, right? But that's kind of how it works. All right, so let's go back here. What you're wanting to do, again, if I go back down here, is you're wanting to change the route so that by doing these mental fitness exercises, you're going to build new neural pathways, the mental muscle of SAGE, to conquer the saboteur mental muscle. And so now, instead of going down this, the synapses happens, something's said, some event happens, and off you go, and you say, no, I'm going to think about this, and I'm going to right now by doing maybe a PQ rep if I need to, a mental fitness repetition exercise, or I've practiced it so often that now I'm going down that route easily. Okay. And I can tell you this works because I catch myself sometimes hours later after something happened and go, wow, when that happened, I didn't even respond in a negative way anymore. That's so strange, right? So interesting. So that's a little bit about the saboteurs. That's what we're trying to stop, is the saboteur, and say, okay, this is a negative thought. Let's just stop it. All right. That's the first step. Now let's go to the 3 core muscles at the root of mental fitness. All right. The second one, so we've been through the saboteur interceptor. The second one is the SAGE, strengthening the SAGE. Okay. What does that even mean? Well, your SAGE is the one in you that handles challenges with a clear and calm mind and positive emotions. The great thing is, know how we know that we've got only 10 saboteurs, okay? We only have 5 primary powers, 5 primary SAGE powers, which are empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate. And we're going to go through that. And it's just a simple thing that you can put on your desk, on your computer, whatever, and you'll start to learn how to move from that sabotage stop and the choice you have to go to the SAGE brain. Once you've activated your SAGE brain through your PQ reps, your mental fitness exercises, you'll have access to these powers. So before we go into what those 5 primary SAGE powers are, let's understand that the SAGE, again, just to reiterate, lives in the region of the brain associated with positive emotions, which is your right brain, right? Sorry, it's peace and calm, clear-headed focus, creativity, and big picture. It operates from the SAGE perspective. Excuse me while I just have some water there. So operating from the SAGE perspective. What is the SAGE perspective? SAGE perspective says, well, every outcome or circumstance, whatever is happening, can be turned into a gift and an opportunity. Remember, I talked about COVID. I talked about the fact that I can look at it as negative, or I can choose to say, what's the gift here and what's the opportunity? And I might not get the answer, but the fact that I'm actually asking the question and getting curious puts me in a different frame of mind. Okay. And it's so much more peaceful. And I tell you, sometimes when you go into this gift and opportunity place and you look at things in a positive way, the people who are extremely negative, it irritates them. That's because their saboteurs are going nuts. right? But there's a way to train the mind to change that. So, do I choose to say this is a negative perspective, or do I go down the route of gift and opportunity? Well, let me ask you a question. If I ask you which perspective is true, the saboteur who says this is bad, or the sage that says this is a gift? Tell me, what do you think in the chat box? If you're here and listening, tell me in the chat box what you think. Is it good or is it bad? Well, I'm going to tell you. It is whatever you think it is. There you go. Whichever you believe becomes true. You know, Wayne Dyer has a great quote that says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And this couldn't be truer, because if I look at it as something bad, I will find the bad. I can prove to you that it is bad. If I find that it's a gift, I can find ways that it could possibly be a gift. All right. So it's neither good or bad. It's neither bad or a gift. It's just whatever you believe. You're the one who commands your brain, or the sage or the saboteur commands your brain. You're the one who makes that choice. Sometimes not an easy choice, but we're going to learn how to do that. All right. So we started with identify the saboteur. What are all the negative feelings you are experiencing about this situation, and which saboteur might be causing them? So my husband says to me, why did you leave the door open? Right away, I feel criticized, right? And he's just asking. But anyway, and I could be from the sage place just going, he's just asking. Maybe he asked in a certain way that I don't care for, and I can tell him that, but he was just asking. So if I respond, what's wrong with him? What saboteur is causing that response? My judge immediately, because I'm taking the blame off me and putting it on him, right? And I might say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. I'll go close it. It's okay. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. Do you need something from outside, and I'll go get it?" That's the pleaser, right? Or it might be, well, maybe we should, and see if you can spot this one. Maybe we should put an alarm on the door that if it's open for more than 30 seconds, that the alarm will go off so we don't forget. That might be the stickler, right? The restless might say, "Oh, you're so annoying. Like, just close the door. What do you care?" And I just go downstairs, I slam the door, and I come back. Or I might just not listen to him, and I might avoid him because I don't want conflict, right? So noticing where do these things come from is really important, because it decides whether I'm commanding my own brain or if one of my saboteurs is commanding the brain. It's kind of fun, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, you have to laugh about this, but it is pretty sad when it's running our life. So, is it funny or is it sad? You choose. All right. Let's go to shifting to the sage perspective. So you now identified it's the judge, it's the stickler, it's the avoider. And listen, if you don't know which saboteur it is, it doesn't matter. You know that it's a negative thought. That's all you need to know. Okay, I'm simplifying here, but some of us like to have a little fun with it. Now, let's shift to the sage perspective. How could this problem be converted into a gift and opportunity? So I might say, for example, let's take the example of COVID, because everybody knows about it. Everybody can relate, right? I might look at it and say, well, do I need the gift of knowledge? So what knowledge would I need to gain so that the payoff in the future could be much larger than what this is costing me now, right? The costing me now would be the saboteur who's judging it, right? What might I need to learn? So part of the sage mind might say, let me read more about what COVID is, where it got started, how maybe somebody might have, created this out of fear. Like I might need to get more knowledge about it. Or I might say, before everybody responds about having to wear masks or gloves or whatever we need to do, maybe I do that for now until I learn more about whether this is really important. So I gain the gift of knowledge. Or, so how could this problem be converted into a gift and opportunity? I might look at the gift of power. Like, I might see the problem as a weight in a gym against which muscles grow. So, which sage power must grow to handle this? What's the gift of that power growing? How may that show up in my life? So, we're going to look at the gift of power. All right. But you may at this point just say, well, if I want to see it as a gift and opportunity, what power might I use to help me get there? And we'll learn more about that in a moment. The gift of inspiration is I might commit to an inspiring action that I wouldn't have done if this bad thing hadn't happened. So we kind of got inspired, our family, when COVID hit and people lost their jobs. Instead of going into the spiral of, sabotaging thoughts, we thought, well, what's the opportunity here? What's the gift? Maybe if this hadn't happened, my daughter wouldn't have moved in with her family. We wouldn't have been sitting there for 7 months altogether. And then we wouldn't have had the urge to figure out a way out, which our way out was to move across the country. We went and moved to Kelowna, BC, British Columbia, and never been there before, took a risk. Within a month, we were packed up our truck and we left. And what's that action? What's the action that becomes the gift, the outcome of the action? Which today I go, wow, why didn't we do this earlier? Why didn't we take risks earlier in our life? However, it is what it is, right? That's a sage perspective. It is what it is. And so take what is and what do I have control over, or what am I trying to control, is the saboteur place. So those are ways to look at the perspective. Now, how do we implement a sage power? And I hope everybody's following now. If you have any comments here at this time or questions, absolutely please join me and ask your questions. I'm here for you. Yes, so Amy's saying they both can be true. Elaborate a little bit more on that, Amy. Just tell me a little bit more about what you were thinking, because I think I lost my train of thought before I looked at your message here. When you're saying they both can be true, that takes me back to the last slide, I suppose. Let me just go back here. Stop my screen share. And I am going back to my screen, which is, I want to catch that. I think it's probably where, is it bad or is it a gift? I think that's what you were talking about, Amy. Yeah, I love that. I love when you guys are jumping in and giving some feedback, because that's really important. Okay, let's move on to, just go back to my screen here. We're going to go through the 5 sage powers now. So you've got the first one, which is empathize. This is the power game called visualize the child. Okay. What would be the most loving and compassionate thing you could say to yourself in this situation? Well, I've got a friend who I remember when he was bringing up his 14-year-old daughter, and she was giving him some trouble, and he was a single dad, and he stopped everything. Instead of getting caught up with his saboteur, judging her and defending himself and, trying to control the situation, he went into this place and looked at her and said, "Sweetie, can we try something different here? I'm just realizing I have never raised a 14-year-old daughter before in my life. This is the first time. And this is the first time you're 14 years old and dealing with some of the rules here. So why don't we work on this together instead of getting upset with each other?" I just love that piece, because he was being passionate or compassionate rather, and loving to himself to begin with, by saying, "I've never done this before. How many times in parenting, I've never done this before. I've never been a parent before. I've never been married before. I've never, done these things before. I need to be a little bit more gentle, empathize with myself." Another thing is to take a picture of yourself when you were a child, and grab that picture and look in the eyes, right into the eyes of your picture, and say, and I've got a picture actually here on my phone, so I'm just going to take a look and look inside and say, "Wow, who are you behind all that? Who's the little child, the inner child there, was born with no judgments, with nothing in the way, and was just innocent? And what kind of beauty does that child have? And where can I start working from that place? Because I would never treat a child the way I treat myself." Right? You may want to visualize your pet. Like, I actually do something very interesting. I'm going to admit something. I'm going to be vulnerable here for a moment. There are times when I respond back to my husband in a way that may not be the kindest way to respond. And so I catch myself, and this is something I'm still working on, where I'm quick to respond to him in a way that I would never respond to one of my best friends. And he is my best friend. So I want to work on the pause and the PQ reps at that moment where I can, you know, some people might say bite your tongue for a moment and just say, if I was responding to my child, if I was responding to my friend, how would I respond that's different than it is today? And I got to tell you, this is about being honest with yourself and empathizing and saying, you know what, I've been in that Jeep driving down the path that's the easiest way and responding with a snap instead of being gentle and empathetic. So that's a way to start working with your empathy. And empathizing with others, put yourself in the shoes of the others. So I do that when I'm talking to my best friend that's not my husband, another best friend, and I speak to them from a place where I'm sharing my feelings. I don't judge them. I don't snap at them, right? And I think we're, whether we're all guilty of this or not, but I would think a large percentage of us are guilty of this, and it's an opportunity for us to change that. Of all the powers, the sage powers, the 5 sage powers, empathize is always the one you start with. You don't have to use all 5 powers. You can choose to use only 1 or 2, but you always, always, always start with empathize. That's the place to go to. And that's a great rule to begin with, because then you don't have to go and check your list. Which one do I use? You just start with empathize. You do your PQ rep, you go straight to empathize, and then you can start to play with the others. So let's visit some of the others. Okay. Number 2 is explore. The power game is fascinated anthropologist. So think of yourself as a child again, fascinated anthropologist. So without blame or judgment, because remember, children don't start from that place of blame and judgment, what are all the relevant factors that might be contributing to this problem? This is information about you, about others, and circumstances. I was coaching with a client just the other day where she started to judge herself around some issue that she was having with her boss. Her boss, who was usually her best friend, was very cold, was avoiding her, and she just went right into her stories, and she started to sabotage her mind using all these negative thoughts, thinking, what did I do wrong? They're going to fire me. Maybe I need to look for another job. And she didn't look at exploring, right? If she had explored without blame or judgment, she might have looked at all the factors. Like, what's the fact here? Well, the fact is, I'm feeling this and I don't know why. And I don't know why this other person or my boss is responding this way. So this is an opportunity to go and maybe ask, to explore, to find out what the facts are before you make a story up and truly a judgment and start to turn your life over. I mean, she was ready, working with a therapist that she was working with, where, quit your job, go find another job. This is not the place to be. And it was like, no, hang on a second, back up a little bit. Have you empathized first? Have you taken the time to explore what the facts are? And I love this exercise that I've used with clients and supervisors use with their direct reports, where they say, I want you to write out everything that your complaint, like, let's write it all out. And then they go back and they look at the piece of paper and they circle all the things that are facts and they underline all the emotions. And it's amazing how many emotions are in that description and very few facts. So if we don't have the facts, we need to explore and find out what they are, right? That's without blame or judgment. We could go to the place of, well, why didn't you tell me that? Well, the fact is, you weren't told that, and now you're finding out. Stick to the facts. Explore. So fully understand what's going on before figuring out what to do about it. All right? The next one is innovate. This is Sage Power number 3, the power game. I love this one, especially when we're doing things like in groups, in projects, where people can start to come together and play this game. It's called the yes and game. And when you're leading a team, it's great to use the yes and game, because it's not, you're brainstorming together and everything's allowed, and you grow, you actually pull off other people. So this is innovation, remember? So quickly come up with as many ideas as we can without any evaluation or judgment during the idea generation phase. We will then only evaluate and select workable ideas after rapid idea generation. So when I'm co-leading with somebody in front of a group, we have our agenda, we're working on this. So I might be co-leading this presentation with somebody, and suddenly, let's take Amy. You're on this call with us here today. Amy might come in and say, well, the both can be true. And I'm like, I don't agree with her, but I'm not going to go into that place of blame or judgment. I'm going to say, yeah, what I love about that is that you're looking at the possibilities of where we actually stand in, whether it's good or bad. And then I grow from that. And then I go, and what if we were to um, put out a slide that showed that for our people here, or we actually gave an example of how that worked? So now I'm growing on the idea that she had, even though I may not agree with it. I'm going to find a little piece of truth in there, just a tiny little piece that I can say, and. So what I love about that little piece, and grow from there. Somebody might say, let's decide where we're going to go to eat tonight. So we're all sitting there, 4 of us, and we're deciding, and somebody says, let's go Chinese. I go, Chinese? I don't want to eat Chinese. I'm hungry an hour later, and it's got too much this and that and it, whatever, I believe, right? But I might say, what I love about your idea is that we're not going for the traditional choice here. We're going outside and maybe adventuring to different cultural foods that we've never tasted before. What if we were to, and what I like about that idea is the culture thing. And why don't we try something like Vietnamese food? I've never done that before. Right? So we grow on that. So we're innovating. So we're not judging and putting somebody down. We're growing on the idea, even as silly as it may be. Okay? Grow on it. Innovation. All right. The next piece is the number 4 is navigate. This is the power game of flash forward. So imagine seeking guidance from your own wiser elder self. And trust me, I have done this with my grandchildren. There is a little wiser elder self inside those kids. When they're very young, they have that wiser elder self. It doesn't have to be, elder doesn't mean old. It just means like there's an old soul, inside a child. So even within yourself, there's that wiser elder self. And she or he is at the end of your life, healthy of mind and body, from that ageless wisdom. What would she or he say is most important in the situation? So if you think about it, I might be in a place where my husband again says, "Why did you leave the door open?" And I go back and I go, "What would my wiser elder self respond to him right now?" Well, my wiser elder self actually has a lot of humor. So I might grab my purse, run down the stairs, grab his arm and say, you know what? Why I left the door open? Because I think it would be a great idea for the 2 of us to go out for dinner tonight. What do you say? Right? Do you see where the humor came up, where I took the opportunity to tap into something that I wouldn't have tapped into? If I didn't ask my wiser elder self, I might have just asked, how can I handle this in a more sage way, in a more, empathetic way? But no, my wiser elder self gave me an idea about being more humorous and taking the opportunity to share some time with my husband. Now, if I hadn't tapped into that, I would never have come up with that. So it's really fascinating. That's the wiser elder self. Love it. And she's always there. He's always there. You can ask at any point in time. I don't want to do this article. I don't want to write this article right now. It's just, breaking my brain here. What would my wiser elder self say? Well, my wiser elder self might say, take a clean piece of paper and just start over from the beginning and see what comes up. Just write down your thoughts. And I go, wow, okay. Now starting over I might be sabotaging thought. Why would I do that? But if I allow myself, maybe something might come. Or why don't I draw a picture? Now, my wiser elder self might say, why don't you draw a picture? Or why don't you go put on your funny hat? Take your hat and put it on your head and put a mirror in front of you and say, well, now I'm going to write this article from this perspective. Wouldn't that be cool? Can you see how the wiser elder self just grows on you? I love her. Okay, let's go to number 6, the number 5 rather. Activate. The power game is preempt the saboteurs. So when this happens, my saboteur is going to show up. How am I going to handle it? So I might think, what specific actions, up to 3 actions, are you willing to commit to? So I might say, okay, about writing my article, I'm going to commit to putting my hat on. I'm going to commit to putting a mirror up, and I'm going to commit to taking a new sheet of paper and drawing a picture to start off to get my juices flowing, right? And as I move into the action, what would my saboteur say? So I can just see my saboteur going, "You're such a fool. Like, why would drawing a picture and putting a hat on and looking in the mirror change anything?" Like, judgment, right? Judgment. Or you need to do this perfectly, and this is not perfect. You're going to ruin your article if you, right? All this stuff comes up. But on the contrary, what I'm going to say is, when those saboteurs come up, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm choosing to have fun for the next 5 minutes. If after 5 minutes I agree with you, I'll take the hat off and I'll just do it the old way. But right now, I'm going to take 5 minutes, put my hat on, look in the mirror, and draw a silly picture and see where it takes me. Fascinating, isn't it? So I'm ready. So when I go to grab my hat and put the mirror and I start sitting down, if that thought comes up, I go, yeah, I know about you. I was already expecting you. Where have you been? And I'm doing this for 5 minutes. Let me put the timer on. I told you I was doing this, right? Isn't that cool? So these are 5 powers that you can use that are very, very empowering. Now, what I suggest is I can send you these slides if you want, and you can print some of these and put them, make little cards or whatever, stick them on your computer, stick them on your desk, put them in your purse, whatever, and you can use these moving forward. All right. So we've done the saboteur. We've figured out who they are. We've looked into the sage powers, and looking at the sage perspective, the gift and opportunities. Now let's get into how do we do all this, right? Because our mind is going to that place where the Jeep always goes, down that track where the grasses run down, right? All right. So let's take a look at this. Let's go back to my presentation. I'm going to share this screen again. And here we go. All right. So the self-command place. This is number 3. Remember, there's only 3 core things: the saboteur interceptor, the sage powers, and how do we command our brain to shift from that saboteur to the sage? You commanding your mind versus your mind commanding you. And I want to make a very strong point here that's important. I don't want to hear from you in the silence over there where I can't hear you, but I want you to be very conscious of your words and your thoughts as you recognize your saboteurs. You are not a stickler. You are not a judge. You are not a victim. You are not a controller. You have the saboteurs in your left brain, but you are not that saboteur. It is just a part of what's running your brain, but it is not you. I want to be very, very clear on that. So when we go to self-command, we are taking charge of getting rid of the saboteur and stepping into our sage minds, right? So how do we do that? Well, positive intelligence has shown us that you can do 10-second PQ reps, and they're a powerful way to command your brain to the quiet region where your saboteur lives. 10 seconds. So every time you intercept your saboteur, you can do a PQ rep. You'll get to the point where you won't need to do it so much. Well, actually, I do it, might not be even 10 seconds, because I find myself when a saboteur comes up, I recognize it, I stop it, and I just take a big breath. Or I walk away, go to the washroom, take a few breaths, do some PQ reps. And again, we're going to get to what those are. And then I'm able to move into my empathize and choose something else if I want to. Okay? So 10-second workout to strengthen the brain, right? 10 seconds, not long. But here's what we've proven, or what positive intelligence has proven through the research. You do an intensive 6-week practice where you need a minimum of 15 minutes a day for mental fitness. You do this 6 to 8 weeks, and the brain will be wiring differently. Okay, the MRIs that they have done has shown that you increase your gray matter in the sage region of your brain, in the right side, and you decrease the gray matter in the saboteur brain region, the left side. Okay. Just by doing this 15 minutes a day. Now, the importance too is that, let me just talk about this for a moment here. Shirzad Shamin, who is the author of the book Positive Intelligence and who's done all this research, has experienced with some of his clients that, if they do, for example, an hour meditation in the morning. So he had a CEO, for example, who could do an hour meditation in the morning, had a meditation room, the perfect, sound, the perfect colors, the perfect setup, the perfect, aromas and all that. And this CEO would sit there and do his hour meditation every morning. And then off he'd go to work, get in a suit, and then boom, that meditation room was out of the picture. The part that's really important is to bring this into your life so that it becomes part of who you are and how you be, for the lack of better English, right? Which means that it's best to break it up into 3 times a day. Now, 15 minutes minimum means 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes midday, and 5 minutes in the evening. You want to do more, which is what I did? Absolutely. That's even better. And it's not just about meditation, by the way. Okay. There are other things, but they put yourself in a mindset of meditative mindset is really what it does. But if you do, I used to do 15 minutes in the morning, or sometimes 30 minutes in the morning. Then I do, sometimes 10 minutes in the day and then 15 minutes in the evening. You can put more, there's no problem, but 15 minutes minimum and 3 times a day broken up. Okay. So that's what I would suggest you start with, is 15 minutes and just expand from there. Okay. Knowing that, let's go into the mental fitness. What is it? What is mental fitness? It's focused attention on one physical sensation. So these are sensations. So what are our sensations? We can see. So sometimes we can visualize internally, or we can see. We can use our eyes. We can hear. We can taste. We can touch. We can breathe, which is a physical sensation, right? These are all using our senses, right? So these are all PQ reps. But how do we do them? Well, here's an example. So do this with me, okay? I want you to just take a moment and do this exercise with me. Let me just see here. I stopped sharing, so that's not going to help. Well, I don't need the screen to show you the screen. I want you to look at me, all right? We're going to do this together. So you're going to start off with taking 2 deep breaths and then breathing normally. So take another breath. Notice I closed my eyes just so I could be concentrated on my breath. So I might be noticing the temperature of air that's going in and out of my nostrils. So it might be cool air, warm air. I notice maybe my chest and stomach rising and falling. So it might be chest expanding, chest deflating. And it might be my lungs expanding, lungs deflating. But every time your mind wanders, you gently bring it back to your breath. Don't allow the judge in, because you're going to be distracted. Okay. You might hear something and you come back and you go, wow, what was that? And then you go, oh, hang on, I'm back. And that might happen numerous times throughout the exercise, but it's okay. I'm not going to say, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just do this? Why do I always get distracted? That's the judge. Don't let the judge in. This is about focusing only on one thing. Breath in, breath out. And I label it in my head. Breath in, breath out. Breath in, breath out. And I do this for 5 minutes. I put my timer on my phone and I just say that I want to do it for 5 minutes. Or I put my timer on that times me and says, let me just see how long I want to go. And I might discover that I've done it for 12 minutes, right? So this is the breathing one. This is one that I like to use, but it seems that the most favorite for a lot of people is the tactile. So I want you to take a moment to touch your two fingers together. Okay. Just take two fingers and touch them together and just rub them back and forth ever so gently. And just feel the skin. Now, your judge might be coming up and going, oh my word, my skin is very wrinkly and dry. Let go of the judge. Back to what am I feeling? I feel little bumps. Now put all the fingers together and rub them together. Focus, focus, focus on the texture. Focus on the temperature. Move your hand down to the palm. Slowly and back up. Oh, it's ticklish. It's cool. The center's warmer than the top. Remember, why is the temperature cooler there than up there? That's judgment. Just noticing. Oh, nice. And I've got little bumps there and ridges. Yeah. Notice that's tactile, and I can do that. Now there are there are guided ways to do this, and if you want more information on that, contact me, and I can let you know about that. Okay. That's the tactile. All right. So the tactile, just show you on the slide here. You're just feeling the depth, the fingers, the hands, the objects. What's the texture, temperature, curves, corners, thickness, thinness. And you can do this with anything. You can pick up, your water bottle and do this with the water bottle. You can pick up a pen. You can be in a meeting that's terribly boring. They're talking about something, a different department that's not your department. And you're just focusing on, instead of getting annoyed and judging other people, you just take your pen and you start just feeling it. Feel your fingers underneath the table. Hopefully you don't have your phone in a meeting, but if everybody's touching their phone, then you might touch your phone and feel the phone. You can just play with your necklace and feel the ridges on the necklace. Doesn't matter. Choose something to feel. That's all that requires. All right. Let's go to another one. Hearing. I love this one. This is so cool. So you're going to listen to the furthest sound. So let me just stop sharing here and you can come and do it with me, okay? So I want you to just sit here and listen to the furthest sound you can hear. And closing your eyes sometimes just helps with the concentration. So I'm listening to the furthest sound. Okay. Now I'm listening to the closest sound. Of course, you're doing this very slowly, okay? I'm rushing it a little bit. Then you just listen to maybe your breath. You thought it was the closest sound, but maybe your breath is closer. So listen to your breath. I get distracted. My nose is itching. So I just go, yeah, nose is itching. Back to the breath. Okay. That's listening. And you can do that. The wonderful thing is to take that out into a park. Sit quietly in a park somewhere. Stop your car at the side of the road. Just do this anywhere. You can do it anywhere. You can go into the washroom. You can go wherever. Just pay attention to the sounds and what you're hearing. And you'll be amazed at what you can hear that you just have tuned out in your life. I wanted to make mention of this as there's something I wanted to say here about. I lost my thought. It's okay. It'll come back if it's meant to be. You see, I'm not being hard on myself. I'm not judging and going, why would you stop that? Why didn't you just let it go? No, just let it be. All right. So that's that was the listening, the hearing. Now you can go to another one that is called labeling. So this is where you scan your body, and as you focus on your breath, begin to label what you're paying attention to at every inhale or exhale. So keep bringing it back to the attention of the inhale and exhale and label each. So any distractions. So it might sound like this, okay? So you might be doing, let me just stop this and you can watch me again. So I want you to just breathe in. So I'm going to say it out loud. You don't have to say it out loud, right? So breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, Itchy nose. Notice I'm labeling. Itchy nose. I'm not concentrating on my breathing. I concentrated suddenly on my nose. Breathing out. Breathing in. Plane went by. Breathing in. Breathing out. Breathing in. Oh, dog barking. What time is it? Oh, breathing in. Breathing out. Judging myself for not doing this well. Okay, let go of the judge. Breathing in and breathing out. And this is called labeling. So I've focused on one thing, which I chose to do my breath. And then from there, I then move into labeling if my thought goes somewhere else. So it's just constantly labeling, and take your time. All right. I've added a few things of my own here in ideas and to help people, because this is kind of almost it's a mindfulness, it's a meditative state in its own way, because you're just concentrating on one thing. But it's interesting because when you learn meditation, there's a belief that in meditation you should not have any thoughts. No, that is one form of meditation, but this form is just saying label whatever is. Whatever's coming through your mind, whatever you're concentrating on, whatever you're focused on, just label it. It's all about the focus. And believe it or not, this builds new neural pathways in your right brain. That's why we're doing this exercise. It has been proven. 6 to 8 weeks, 15 minutes minimum a day, 3 times a day, but with a total of 15 minutes minimum. And doing this for 6 to 8 weeks, you will, I mean, if you want to go and have an MRI, go and have an MRI. I wouldn't suggest it, but you can see the gray matter improve in your right brain and decrease in your left brain. Now, it doesn't take away, the left brain, what you need it for, your logic and all those kinds of things. It's not going to destroy that part of your brain. It's just going to take away the sabotaging thoughts. Okay, it trains your brain to go into synapses where you want it to go. All right. So I've given you more content here as far as other things you can do. One of them here is mindfulness in nature. Take a walk. I mean, I walk around the block, the same block, and when I'm doing that, I'm looking at what's new that I haven't seen before. I'm looking, oh, check out the leaf there. Look at the yellow flower. Wasn't there yesterday, Just interesting. No judgment. Not, wow, that guy's driveway is really bad. Like, he should fix it. That's not mindfulness. That is judgment. So just notice there's cracks in the sidewalk. The driveway is uneven. Notice, that's it. So walking or sitting in nature, practice some of the previous exercises. You can also look at things without judgment. Just notice the tree, the flower, the mountain, the water flowing in the river. Smell the air. Is it cool, warm, hot? Not judging, just noticing. Go for a walk in the same place. We talked about this, noticing something you've never seen before. No judgments, just notice from a place of curiosity. Okay. And you can be moving. You can do this. You can do this with I've done this where I've looked at a picture in my office. I had a picture, I've moved offices now, but I had a picture where I could see the textures, the colors, and I would just notice everything in that painting and be curious. Remember, the sage mind is curiosity, right? Curious how the painter used this texture just at the tip of the nose, right? Or how the blue is almost like there's 10 different blues fading into each other. Just curiosity, just noticing. Okay, those are some. What I've done, and remember I said that a lot of people who have anxiety have a lot of these saboteurs running through their minds. I did mention something about that earlier. And so I did give you some other exercises here that may help with the anxiety in the moment. Remember, when you're transferring from saboteur to sage, you might want to take what we call the stress deflator exercise. That's falling out of breath. You take a breath. So take a breath. Now breathe in again. One more sip, right? And then exhale. Noisy. Or right? You do that again. Take a breath. More air. And exhale. Noisy. And you repeat that. That is extremely relaxing. It gets rid of your stress. And people who have anxiety have been doing these exercises, and it really helps. And these are, again, all PQ reps. Stress deflator number 2, box breath, increases mindfulness. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Some people do this with 5. Breathe in for 5, hold for 5, exhale for 5, hold for 5. Okay, whatever number works. Some people have a shorter breath capacity, but when you do these exercises, you will increase your breath capacity actually. So you're going to be doing even more good. And then there's the emptying breath. Calming activates the parasympathetic nervous system and calms the sympathetic nervous system. So you inhale for 3 counts. So 1, 2, 3, and exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as much as possible. And then repeat. I find this challenging for me. I don't know why it's challenging. I find it a little bit difficult, but practice again. Just because I put my coat on with my left arm doesn't mean I can't start doing it with my right arm. Practice, practice, practice. This is what this is all about. So I want to give you some ideas also about other ways of doing this, where, sometimes our days are very full and we don't have the time, or we think we don't have the time, or we don't make the time to do these exercises. So I find myself going into the washroom, for example, listening to myself pee. Okay. I mean, this is we're all nurses here, right? So I listen to myself pee, and then I go and wash my hands, and I listen to the running water. I soap my hands, especially with COVID and the amount of seconds that we had timers in the bathroom for the kids and teaching us how to wash our hands for a long time. Well, I focused on, really getting the suds everywhere between. That's just focus, 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 right? So I find myself doing that. At night, sometimes I might have a lot running through my mind. So I lie down in bed and I think, okay, let's say I'm on my back, for example. I might say, okay, where am I leaning? Here, do it in the chair. Do it in the chair right now. I do the same thing in bed. Think about, you're sitting on a chair right now. Where are the pressure points on your bum? It's not your entire bum, even though your entire bum's sitting there. You have certain points on your bum that the pressure is on. Think about your elbows, either on the armrest or on the desk. Where are the pressure points? And when I do that in bed, I find that when I'm focusing just on the pressure points, and then I might turn and focus on different pressure points, I'm actually relaxing myself and I fall asleep easier. And in the meantime, I'm doing mental fitness. Listen, mental fitness is a far cry from physical fitness, in the sense that I don't need to pack my bags, get my running shoes, put on my right clothes, take the towel, get a shower, drive to the gym. I don't need to do all that. I can just take 5 minutes between my calls, between seeing my patients or whatever, to just do something for myself. Driving to work, do it when you get in the car, 5 minutes. Arrive at work, park the car, do another 5 minutes. When you're going in to have a crucial conversation with somebody, when you're going into a meeting, when you're about to make a speech, when you're about to, handle a task or have a conversation with someone that might be difficult, do some PQ reps beforehand. And it's incredible the difference that it makes. I have a client just the other day who said to me, geez, where she was, she was about to do something and she stopped and did some PQ reps and just before going into work. And she said the whole day was different just because she took those 5 minutes to set the tone and the intention of going into work with a peaceful, remember, peak performance, peace of mind and wellness, and then healthy relationships. So she set the intention and she did her PQ reps, and it was beautiful. And noticing big differences. I have clients who are on medication for anxiety. Now, I'm not saying stop medication. That's something between you and your doctor. But I'd have clients who actually stopped their medication because they've been doing PQ reps. It works. It works. And you'll only know if you keep doing it. It might sound so easy and simple, but isn't that what the beauty is? So yeah, let's do that. From here, I really just want to, I really want to stress the importance that we've talked about this. This has been almost a 2-hour session, right? Because I wanted to take you through the science. I wanted to take you through the breakthrough of each saboteur, the sage powers, and practice the exercises. But what's really important to understand is that learning is one thing, which in fact, whoops, hang on a second, was canceled. Hang on a second. Learning is one thing. Like, I mean, the simplicity of it here is, let's go to one screen to show you the simplicity of it, right? There we go. Okay. The simplicity of the operating system is basically, if you're feeling a negative emotion, stop. You're in saboteur mode. Just say, saboteur, no thank you. Or, I know it's the judge, I know it's a stickler, whatever you want to do. You find your way. Do some PQ reps to quiet the saboteur and activate the sage. So in the moment, you can just do 10 seconds. Or I walk away and I do 15 minutes. But it depends on the circumstances. If you're in the middle of an argument, you might want to just say, just give me a moment. And underneath the table, you're doing, you're texting, you just say, I just need a moment. Doesn't matter what they think. Or say, I'm just going to run to the washroom. I'll be right back and we can continue this conversation and go do some PQ reps. Whatever it takes. But that's the moment to just, or take a breath. Let them rant. They're going on and on and on. Just take that moment where they're doing a minute of ranting, where you just let them rant and you do your PQ reps in the meantime. Then you assume the sage perspective, which, remember, is what is the gift and opportunity here? Maybe the gift is, maybe it's time that I had that serious conversation with this guy now, right? Or maybe it's an opportunity to say what I really think. Always from a sage perspective, though, right? And you're going to take on that sage power. You're going to begin always with empathy, right? The empathy is the most important. Okay, I've never been in a situation like this before, or this is a situation that's making me uncomfortable, and it's okay. It's all right. It's just my body responding. It's the normal way it responds. And I'm just going to take a breath and I'm going to move into my sage power, which I chose empathy first, but then I might want to explore things and look at the facts. I might want to be creative, right? Yes, and when somebody's accusing me, yeah, you know what I like about what you're saying is that I have some responsibility in this. And I might come up with an idea that comes from there. So if we're going to take responsibility, then maybe what's the responsibility we all need to take in this? Right? Did you see where I took the sage perspective of innovation and just created something from there? I might be navigate, ask my wiser elder self, right? Or activate, decide to do something and say, okay, my saboteur might show up and how am I gonna handle it? Those are all ways of handling it, but you'll become more accustomed. But it's very simple. Stop, PQ rep, sage perspective. There's a gift and opportunity in this. Let me just see what it is. And sage power. Boom, easy. However, as easy as it is, we need to exercise, because the lasting positive change requires 20% insight, which is what we've done today, and 80% mental muscle, which is what you need to be doing after this call. Find a way. And if you need more help on this and you need some ways to, find a recording of some sort to practice these PQ reps, by all means, reach out. I'm here for you and I will help you. Okay. I've got some that I can pass over to you that I've done for myself, and I'd be more than willing to share. So coming back to you now, that was, an hour and 45 minutes almost of PQ presentation. And now I'm willing to take any questions that you may have. So please let me know what your thoughts are. It may be, you're just reflecting on this. It may be, how do I make this happen? It might be a question. It might be what you're taking away from this. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're watching this after as a recording, please add your comments in the recording. Now, remember what I said at the beginning as well. If you're in an organization, I would love, 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 love to be able to bring this presentation, and we can do it according to time and possibilities in your organization, for your staff. And we can do this when we're live here. I can't chat with you, but when we're live in a Zoom call, for example, with a team, there's a lot more interaction, and I can do breakouts, tables and pairing, and have a chat around it, come back. You can ask questions specifically about your saboteurs. All that is possible. And it's much more intimate when we can have that conversation back and forth. The reason I wanted to do this today was, first of all, there are some people who just want to watch this in the middle of the night for whatever reason, and that's the time where they want to study it a little bit more. That's why I put it out here. I do have these webinars also live for free, available at my website. As you can see, mental fitness, www.aliveinhealthcare.com. You can send people there to participate in that webinar, and they can be live asking questions, or like I said, I can bring it to you either live if you're in my area or if I'm in a different area. I am in Florida at the in June, end of June, and I'm in Kelowna, BC right now in Canada. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you and your staff or your family even. Okay. This has been done with families where the families do this together. Fascinating piece about families is when we're doing it together as a family, you know, the facilitator, myself, I'm the one who holds the space to say, we're here to talk about you for your learning, right? It's not about sitting there and going, oh yeah, you're a stickler, you're a stickler. You're always doing this and always doing that. Because what is that? That's the judge, right? That's the judge. That's not what we want. So as we work as a family, we start to learn to take responsibility for our own things. And it might be, you know, as I ask in families, when I say, okay, Dad, I'm struggling right now and I just need a few minutes for myself. Dad can understand. And I go to my room and I do a few PQ reps, or we sit down as a family and do it. Because when we're sitting there doing 10 minutes of PQ reps as a family and then come back and converse, that conversation is totally different. And I know Amy, you're on this call with us here today, and I know Amy works with families a lot. She's working as a nurse in a school, so she's working with parents, she's working with kids, she's working with staff in schools. She has brought this work and has done remarkable stuff with it because the dynamics of the family changes, and when everybody's on the same page and understands the language, understands the lingo, and can speak from a place of saying, "Oh my word, I'm so sorry. That was my judge that just stepped in. Let me rephrase this, or let me explore. Let me get all the facts from you first," right? So I'm empathizing with myself by admitting, by being vulnerable and sharing and saying what I noticed here. Now, a question from the family might be, "Are you noticing anything right now as you're speaking?" But I'm not going to say, "You see, there you go again, being the victim here," right? Because that doesn't help. So we're changing the way we're talking to each other, and we're being much more aware of our impact, not only on others, but on ourselves. Because at the end of the day, you know, happiness is based on your circumstances. I'll be happy when, we get more staff in the hospital. I'll be happy when my husband just goes and sits down and watches the football game or whatever. He doesn't watch football, but that's an example, right? So those things are circumstantial, whereas joy is a feeling, or it's actually an attitude that we have that defies all circumstances. So even if my spouse is, ticking me off right now, I can find a way so that it doesn't work that way. He doesn't have that impact on me anymore. Then we can have the conversation about, you know, I'm noticing this, and here's my request. That's the crucial conversation where I can say, I noticed this when you speak. And just to let you know, if that happens, I will be speaking up and asking for you to change your tone with me, or whatever it is that I'm asking, right? But I won't be in this complaint, and especially the gossip and the complaints that happen behind people. How many of us go to school if we're kids and we're, complaining to our friends about our parents? How many of us go out with the girls and complain about our guys, or vice versa? The guys go out and talk about the girls. I don't think they do that as much as the girls, but then again, I've never been a guy and out with the guys. So who knows? We'll leave that to the mysterious men out there. You can maybe share your wisdom around that. But there's that place of, aren't we tired of this? Aren't we tired of judging ourselves, of judging others, of judging circumstances, when really we can find the peace within ourselves? And like I shared earlier in the call, it's mind-blowing when, what was it the other day? It was a few years ago. I was actually driving on the highway, and I was driving in the middle lane, so I wasn't blocking anybody. I was driving at the regular speed, 100 kilometers per hour, and suddenly somebody just came up on the left, cut me off, and slammed their brakes on. And there was somebody behind me, and so I did what I had to do. Put my brakes on, didn't hit the guy. He took off. The guy behind me didn't hit me. That's fine, and off I went. And it was like an hour later that I went, "Oh my word!" Like years ago, I would have given that guy the finger. And actually, years ago, I hate to say this, but I would have accelerated and gone and cut that guy off and slammed my brakes on. Okay. That was how I was years ago. Well, that's not who I am today. I'm the person an hour later that realizes, wow, I don't do that anymore. I didn't respond. I just went, okay, what do I have control over? Put the brakes on, hope the guy doesn't hit me. And it's just like, remember that synopsis. I was driving down that road, and instead of taking the saboteur lane and cutting that guy off, I chose to take the sage lane that just said, okay, it is what it is. Do what you have control over, and that's it. And then let it go. I mean, empathy, sage, empathy. I don't know what's going on with that guy. Has he had a rough life? Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it right. It just means that something might be happening over there. And that goes to a quote that I often use and tell my clients and tell you guys on these live streams, is the quote that says, "What's hurting you so much that you feel the need to hurt me?" Now, tame it a little bit, because if you feel the need to hurt me is more of the victim. But that quote really is saying curiosity, empathy. What's hurting you over there that you might need a little bit of love right now instead of me judging you? How rich can that be? How great can our relationships be when we're coming from that place? Notice I'm so much more at peace when I say that. I'm not, aggressive. I'm not defending myself, which, if any of you haven't read the books, The 7 Principles of Making a Marriage Work, and it doesn't have to be about marriage, it's about relationships, by John Gottman. That book talks about the 4 toxic behaviors, about blame, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And there are antidotes to that. And the antidotes are all sage related. Okay. But the toxic behaviors, those 4 horsemen, as he calls them, are coming directly from saboteurs. Now, understand, our saboteurs were our survival method when we were younger. So it's not that we're bad or we should have gotten this better and, how did I turn out this way? All that. It's just our mechanism to survive through some of the pain. Pain is inevitable, right? Suffering's a choice. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. So pain will come. Learn to deal with it at that crossroad. Exercise your mental fitness. Learn to deal with it at the crossroad. And then, wow, you're going to live longer. I mean, at the end of the day, with a lot less stress on you, you're going to live longer. Yeah, you'll be, and you know what? Let's even forget about living longer or how many days more or whatever. You're going to be from a place of joy. You're going to have an attitude of positivity that defies all circumstances. So no matter what, I was having a conversation with my mother the other day. My mother's 101 years old. God love her. She's still got her head. She's using a walker, but she's pretty independent. And I was saying to her, and she was feeling down, which is understandable. I mean, that's where my empathy comes in, right? It's understandable. But then we had a conversation around it. Like, she was saying, I'm useless. What am I good for? And I said to her, Mom, first of all, at your age, it's pretty normal, maybe not a great place to be, but it's pretty normal not to be able to hear as well, not to have the memory as well, to be as sharp, to be as fast. So it's not like you're something that that's not expected, let's say. But then I said to her, but you have a choice to stress over everything you have no control over, or take on what you do have control over, which is, for your hearing, you took control by getting hearing aids. For your walking, you took control by getting a walker. And I drop her off at the mall and she walks around for an hour and a half, and then I come back and pick her up. So she's getting the walking in, what she has control over. She's not living with the saboteur of controlling, who's the controller who's trying to control everything, because she can't. She can't. She's not at that stage right now. Now, can we improve her health? Probably in different ways, by looking at how much water does she drink? What are the foods that she eats? I mean, those are basic human needs, right? And we need to look at the basics, not try to just fix the superficial problems. But we have to make a choice in life about letting go of the things we don't have control over. And the only way to do that is to do your mental fitness exercises. So on that note, and because our call is finished in about 5 minutes here, if there are any questions, I will take them. If you watch this after the recording, please put them in and I will answer them. You have my website there. I will put in the, I will now put in the, let me just see here. I'm going to edit this and I'm going to put my direct email, contact Lillian, and I'll give you my email here, which is aliveinhealthcare@gmail.com. Please feel free to connect with me. I misspelled my name here. Let me just go back here. Yeah. Liane. That's how I spell my name. So I've put it at the bottom here, across. I will also put it in, let me just say here, show. There you go. My contact is in there. Contact Lillian, aliveinhealthcare@gmail.com. And I will also put it in the comments here. So I have Judy actually asking a question. That's great, Judy. What if I asked something to be fixed for such a long time and decide to leave it because I'm tired of asking? Yeah, well, I love where you're going with that. So this is in relationships. What do you have control over? You have control over asking. And, I'm going to go to the example of work, and then you can replace this and put it in relationship, right? If I go to my boss and I say, I feel that you're not listening to me. Like I tell the person, I ask over and over again, I'd like, to have some time to be heard. You're not listening to me. And I'd like you to repeat back to me what you've heard, because this has been going on for years and I want to build a better relationship. So I'm going in, although I've made a judgment, I'm really stating a fact that's impacting me. So the fact is, I don't feel heard. Okay. That might be a better approach. So I'm coming from the place of I. That being said, if I ask over and over again and nothing's coming back, I then might create a consequence. Okay. And I've done this in my own relationship where I say, I'm going to use a client who every time she went to her parents' place, they would argue, they'd be fighting. And she came one day and she said, after some coaching with me, she went back to her parents and said, when I come over here, I feel very anxious and upset because I hear you arguing. Now, you're in your own house. You can do what you want, but I want you to understand the impact it has on me. And if that happens today or the next time I come, in the future, I will remove myself. I will leave. I will get in the car and I will go away. And she did that once. And the parents stopped arguing in front of her. And so it worked. But had they had not listened, her choice was either to continue to leave, to make her visits short and to leave, or to stop that relationship, because not all relationships are healthy. It takes two to tango, right? So if somebody is not working with you, you have a choice to either say, you know what, that's petty. I mean, in my relationship, I know I have some stuff that bothers my husband and stuff that he does that bothers me. There are some things that I just say, you know what, this is not worth the argument. I just accept the fact that that's who he is. And he has the saboteur stickler, which sometimes drives me crazy. But I just go, you know what, it's harder on him than it is on me. And I just let it be. Now, if it bothered me to the point where I'm having trouble dealing with it, first I start with how I'm responding to it is where I take responsibility. And then if I'm okay with it, but there's so many things that are going on that, not meeting me, then maybe I choose to leave the relationship. Right. But really, the biggest part is, why do I allow it to bother me? What is it about that? And if I don't feel that I'm getting the certain parts of what I need in connection from my spouse, then I might find it with my friends, right? I might go out and find a friend that loves talking and singing and doing silly things, that doesn't get caught up in, how you're doing it and what you're doing, right? So love the person for who they are, be empathetic, take a look at the child that they are, right? Explore ways. And maybe my question to you is even, what would your wiser elder self say to you? What does she know? And do you want to choose to live in fear for the rest of your life, or the rest of this marriage, or this rest of the, mothering, or being a sister, or whatever the situation is for you? Then you have to ask yourself, I'm going to choose the relationships I want to be around, that are going to bring me to this place of peace, healthy relationships, and peak performance. I hope that answers your question. I hope that answers your question, Judy. And if you want to talk more about this, please connect with me directly, and we can talk about it one on one, and start doing the exercises. And if you want some of my help with that, I can definitely give you some help with that. Um, yeah, that's all. It's really just work on yourself. I think that's where the judge lets go, is the time that I took some time away from my husband and my kids, 6-month sabbatical, where I lived in the same house. I still spent time with them, but I did Project Lil. I did my project where I took time for myself. I did my work. I did my personal work, and I came back and I realized that a lot of the stuff that was going on was coming from me. And whether it wasn't necessarily that I was creating some of the problems, but it was my reaction to the problems, by maybe being a victim of my circumstances, by not having the crucial conversations from I, and asking for what I need, because behind every complaint is a request. You can complain about people, but if you don't request exactly what you want, how do they know what you're looking for? How do they know what change you want? But again, if you keep asking, then where are the circumstances? Where are the circumstances for them? That if they don't do that, this is the circumstance, and it can be directly leaving, ending the relationship, or it can be simply, I'm not cleaning up after you guys anymore. I'm just talking about like kids and stuff like that, right? Or even our spouses. But yeah, I think just working on ourselves is where it all starts. And that's my invitation to you. Just start there, do 6 to 8 weeks of this stuff, and then let's have a conversation. And you're going to start to notice a big difference. You're going to notice a big difference in the first couple of days. It happened to me. I was realizing, wow, I couldn't believe how I saw things differently because of the way I was exercising my mind to think differently, and being aware of my saboteurs and what choices I had. So I hope that helps. We've come up to 2 hours after this call here. It's been a long call, but I hope you got a lot of benefit from it. And like I said, reach out, and I wish you guys a very peaceful heart and lots of joy, right? Remember, joy, the attitude that defies all circumstances. So I'm wishing you all joy, and let me know where I can be of assistance to you. Have a great day. Look forward to seeing everybody again. Bye-bye for now.